Thank you very much. I was asked on the spot for a fact, and it came up I was rescued from a volcano. I think that actually means I have terrible survival skills because I needed outside help. OK, so yeah, my name's Oliver. I'm one of the co-founders of Lightdash. Lightdash is a BI tool, it's a business intelligence tool, and it's a platform for deploying dashboards that your teams build, but also data apps. And today I want to talk about data apps, why I believe they're an amazing upgrade over the dashboards you already have, and to show you that you really have very little reason not to be building these in the agentic era. Yeah, I was going to start with dashboards are dead, and then I realized we've said this so many times, and it seems like they're almost unkillable at this point. We had notebooks that were going to kill dashboards, self-serve, headless BI, web apps, data apps have tried to kill dashboards, but they still persist. They still exist. And this is one of our real dashboards that I'm showing, which is our engineering velocity dashboard. And people look at it all of the time. Even though we have some conversational analytics and things like that, people log in to this dashboard to see kind of like curated a set of related queries. It's a great place to put some related queries and lay them out in a visual way so it's easier to consume. And I remember when we shipped in Lightdash, we shipped the first time we had conversational analytics, and it replied to someone with text. Their first feedback was, can I get this on a dashboard? And I think like dashboards are mostly a compromise, though. They essentially are the lowest common denominator of kind of like a visual layout, having some squares neatly arranged on a dashboard with very little interactivity. Maybe there's some cross filters and things like this. Every BI tool kind of looks the same in that sense. And I think it's because this supports the widest majority of use cases with kind of like the least amount of features. And so, OK, if I can put charts on a dashboard, then that means that I can maybe someone can load it up every day as a weekly check-in, or we can use it in a meeting, or maybe I can use it to present to the exec team once a quarter on how we've been doing. So I think they can be fundamentally better, and what stops us from doing that is mostly having the skills, a very coveted skill. In my experience as like a data practitioner was, oh, I wish I could learn some JavaScript or some D3. I would love to do custom visualizations, and some people really took their career that way. But I think I've heard a lot of talks talking about doing text to SQL and using AI to kind of like query our ambiguous and unstructured data. But actually, the ability to use AI to build and design your own front ends is like really here, and the stakes for like making a mistake at the presentation layer are a lot lower than getting something wrong kind of deeper in the data pipeline. So that's what I want to kind of encourage people to think about today. All right, I'm going to show you some examples of some data apps I built in Lightdash that use the exact same set of queries that powered that dashboard. So I don't know if this is going to play automatically. I had prepared a live demo, but I found out just before that it needs to be pre-recorded. OK, here we go. OK, so here I have like my dashboard, and in Lightdash, I'm going to jump into this folder that contains dashboards, but also data apps. They live side by side. And so this is a deck that I made to look at our engineering velocity over the last quarter. It shows how many bugs we fixed and the number of features that we released. And this is like obviously better for the specific use case of me presenting these stats to someone in a presentation. This is obviously better than the dashboard on its own. There's a bunch of reasons why this is also way better than just having a static deck. It's like I don't have to keep exporting my numbers and putting them in there because all of the numbers in this custom app are all live. So I can use this to run a demo. I even had a version of this talk that was built in a data app, and I'll show a bit of that later. And you don't have to like export something from a dashboard to get this working. In this example, I've got a PDF report. There's another common thing people do. And taking like that dashboard in a typical BI tool and then turning it into a very refined PDF like this is a lot of effort. And it usually takes like hours of manual work to export all of those numbers, or maybe you're screenshotting, copy and pasting, exporting things to then like build this PDF for the exec team once a quarter or something like that. It's a huge use of time. And of course, if you had a custom app with live connection to the data that could do this, this would obviously be better than a dashboard. I think I covered this. And lastly, this was quite a fun one I made just this morning. So this predicts how long it would take us to drive our backlog of issues to 0, depending on the size of the team. So it's running some complex forecasting of how many issues are going to come into our repository over time based on the live data. So this is making queries under the hood. to see how many issues are in our repositories and how long it will take for those to close. And so this has some complex data transformation and also some toggles so that I can play with it. So this is, like, again, much more useful than that static dashboard for the specific use case of doing forecasting. But all of those apps are very tailored towards specific use cases. And I think what stopped us previously making these data apps is that they take a lot of investment and effort, and they're very bespoke to a specific use case. Whereas dashboards are maybe like simpler to stand up, and then they're kind of like this lowest common, very simple denominator. But building a custom UI is now essentially free with the advent of agentic coding. You can build a JavaScript app. I bet there's people on all of your teams that are doing this outside of the data ecosystem to build custom front ends. And all of those data apps that I just showed you, I actually built in Lightdash with natural language. And so I'm going to show a quick example of that here. This is the app I built this morning. And I'm going to go down here, and I'm just going to ask it to change some colors. So I'm going to say, change this blue to pink. But I also use natural language to bootstrap the whole application. And this is super cool because I get instant feedback. You know, when you're working on generating a UI, I can instantly see it went from blue to pink. That's exactly what I want, and everything works. And I'm also going to give a sneak peek of later. You can see that underneath this, there's also a bunch of queries and a network tab that shows you all the warehouse queries that are going out. So it's not a black box. You can go and see exactly what the warehouse connection is. And you can see exactly the metrics and the filtering that's happening in order to make this live report. But the takeaway here is that you can today go and create data apps in JavaScript, something really custom and really visual. You've probably already done this in something like a Claude artifact. The capabilities here today, and I feel like we're not spending as much time talking about this. We're really focused on the hard part, which is generating the queries. And a good data app really has two components to it. It has, like, are the numbers actually correct? And the cost of making a mistake there is super high. You know, if I share that the revenue number was like 10% off, I'm going to get maybe that's not a good look for me. But on the UI side, if my presentation layer is like a little off, not only is that really easy to fix because I get immediate feedback, like I can see that it's not the app that I wanted visually, it's pink instead of blue. Whereas on the query side, you usually don't know. If you're not the data expert, you get a number out of your system. You don't really actually have instant feedback about whether that is the number or not. So the takeaway here is iterating on the UI is like such a low-stakes environment and such a great way to kind of like get a huge productivity boost for your data team. Like your data team can be creating data apps as long as you kind of have some governance and you're generating the queries. Yeah, so why isn't everyone doing this right now? I think there's three things that are stopping teams doing this. Firstly, if you just build a JavaScript app on your machine, or if you use something like Lovable or Replit to build an app and connect it directly to your data warehouse, it's almost certainly going to bake the SQL into that data app. So your data app is going to be coupled to the exact queries that run. And the problem with that is that as you go to a bigger scale, which is happening now in a lot of teams, lots of people have their own artifacts and their own front-end apps and bespoke apps, and you want to go change the definition of revenue, you need to go and find all of those endpoints or all of those apps that are consuming data from your warehouse. If there was just a schema change because you wanted to refactor, you have to go update the SQL in all of them. So what you find is that the data logic ends up being copy and pasted between all of these apps. You also need to be able to share it. So you can build a dashboard in Power BI. You don't even consider the fact that it's really simple for you to share that with someone else. You just add them, hey, share with my colleague. I want to share it with my boss. But when you build a custom JavaScript app, all of a sudden, I find people asking themselves, like, what is the internet, actually? I need to have some, like, certificates to make sure it's publicly available and some authentication. Like, how does that work? How do I share a web app with someone when it's stuck on my machine? So that's very hard to deploy and share. And I've met data teams that are building deployment platforms just for data apps. And also the dev tooling for them is basically repeated. So every time somebody prompts a new data app, they'll say, like, here's how you connect to my warehouse. Here's how you should implement cross-filtering. I would love it if there's a number that I can click on it and drill in. So there's a lot of duplicate work and maintenance that goes into these data apps. The demo that I showed of me updating a data app in Lightdash, it essentially provides a harness out of the box. And so we've been thinking a lot about what does a productive harness look like, something that makes the one shot to create the data app as likely as possible to create what you need, but still give you complete creative flexibility on the UI. Because what's awesome about data apps is, what you'll see is, if someone on your team has gone and used Claude or ChatGPT and they've just created a custom front end, you'll realize it's basically impossible to remove that creative freedom from people. You can't be like, oh, wow, so now you can create like any UI you like, but I'm going to stick you back in the BI tool where you can only drag and drop like a few items. You can't even have a custom font, maybe. Or the UX to do that is so difficult. And they feel those stakes, and they feel those stakes to our stakeholders, because they're like, well, I should be able to just change the fonts freely. I don't think that's like a really big deal. Whereas I do understand why the data team is giving me some governance on the actual numbers that I pull. So the goal of the Lightdash harness was to give all of that creative freedom while maintaining the tough bits for you. So it has 3 layers. There's the semantic layer underneath, and there's been a bunch of talks on these. And the Lightdash semantic layer sits on top of your warehouse, and it essentially gives you a way to consume governed metrics from your team. So it holds the definition of revenue. And that means if I go and update the definition of revenue, it's immediately fanned out to all of the live apps that are running. It'll pull the latest definition of revenue without the people that are owning those apps having to actually update it themselves. It also has a hosted runtime. So this idea of, well, I built a dashboard in Power BI or Tableau, and it's just appeared for everybody else. Lightdash data apps are completely custom JavaScript apps that are already deployed. You don't need any deployment platform for that. We invested a huge amount of engineering time in making this secure, and so that you can't exfiltrate your data outside of the runtime or anything. It's a sandbox that can run completely custom code for you. And then it also has an identity. So if I log in as user A, and I should only see regional sales data for the US versus someone in the EU, we can actually look at the same data app, and the Lightdash runtime will know who the person viewing the app is, and it will automatically filter the data based on the person. So we handle all of that. And the last part where we're iterating really fast right now is on the apps SDK. So this is a library that is used by our agent in order to build the JavaScript app, and it provides a bunch of BI fundamentals, like what is the logic for a pivot table? How do I build a spreadsheet? How do I do cross-filtering? How do I do drill into? And all of that has an opinionated SDK that you can also freely break out of to build whatever you like, but it makes that first one shot at least as good as a dashboard. I think the worst version of a data app is if it's missing features that even a basic dashboard has. So this SDK makes it as good as a dashboard from the very first time that you generate it. And all of this together means that you can create an app and then deploy it to everybody on the day. There's nothing else that comes afterwards. So you could go and do this tomorrow. Yeah, zooming out slightly, Lightdash is a general BI tool, and it has a semantic layer with a bunch of integration points. The data apps are the latest in a whole bunch of ways to consume data from your warehouse inside of Lightdash. So the Lightdash semantic layer has all of your context around your data. I think one of the big takeaways I've had from the conference is people saying, there is no silver bullet with getting great answers from conversational analytics or talking to the data in your data warehouse. You just need great context. And you can put that anywhere. I think what we're learning as an industry is you can put it in markdown files. It could be structured. But the most important thing is you have a single source of truth. And Lightdash can be that single source of truth for your team. It has the definitions of metrics and joins between tables. But it also has a couple of other things that I think often you end up going and re-implementing if you make a custom app, which is that it has caching. So if you're using agents to blast your data warehouse with queries, having some kind of cache in front of that makes sure that they're being deduplicated and you're not hitting the warehouse with a ton of live queries makes a huge difference, and all of that is handled, as is row-level security and identity, right? So if you have different consumers that should see different views and cuts of the data, that is stored at the semantic layer, so it lives on top of the warehouse, but comes before all of the integration points. So whether as a user I'm in a Jupyter notebook, or I'm building my own agents with the MCP, or I'm building a classic dashboard, I'm exporting to Google Sheets, or I'm building a data app, they all get the exact same view and security and authorization that the underlying data has. And then if you go and update a metric definition, or if you change someone's access permissions, this is immediately fanned out to all of these integration points for you. And so you're not baking data logic into all of those places. I'm going to try and rush through so we've got some time for questions afterwards. OK, here's a quick sneak peek of the slideshow. I tried to build beforehand, but I wasn't allowed to demo with my own machine. But this was a copy of this presentation that I did in Lightdash. So this is a Lightdash data app. And I wanted to show some live numbers. So this is showing exactly the number of data apps we've been building internally at Lightdash the last 2 weeks. So last week we made 45 of them. And you can even see in this slideshow, I can click and drill into this. So you can imagine if you were doing a presentation, you have the ability to have interactivity and live queries in the deck. And I built this all last night before I found out I wasn't allowed to show it. And I also included our average time to create an app. So it takes roughly 8 minutes to get a good first version of the app that people save. So if you imagine how much time it would have taken you to build a custom data app before, and then go and investigate and make sure all the queries are correct, you can build a kind of governed data app with a completely bespoke visualization in between 8 and 9 minutes, and you can publish that and share it with somebody else. So this is exactly what we're doing internally right now. This slideshow is connected directly to our BigQuery instance that we're running internally. It's really cool. Yeah, that's it. If you'd like to see a live demo, our booth is conveniently right outside there, and we're going to be running demos of Lightdash data apps and the MCP and building with AI in BI. So I'd love to chat to you. Thanks, everyone.